IPMNation.com.
Obsessive? Me? No. It's not like I ran around all weekend trying to figure out how I could correct the crappy audio from Friday. It's not like I spent the weekend looking for 500 feet of shielded internet cable, or what is that? It looks like not like I ran around trying to find a plug-in that grounds and it's a surge protector and scrubs the signal so that the heater couldn't interfere. Not like I wore a hoodie this morning, right? Just so I could leave the heater turned off. What? Who, me? Worried about it? Nah, put it out of your mind.
All Natural Being. Warning, All Natural Being with Brian Brawdy is designed to shake your sense of self to the core.
It's full contact psychology with an empowering twist, a philosophical loofah for your soul.
For those of you not ready or comfortable releasing your inner superhuman, listener discretion is advised.
Here's your host,
Brian Brawdy.
Welcome. If you're new to All Natural Being, the show, I want you to know this right up front, that I am always passionately dedicated, wholeheartedly committed to one thing, losing the static. In addition to the static, I'm obsessed, right? Every day, starting my day, ending my night, thinking about you, thinking about the human condition, and sometimes the people that kind of circle around us, right? If you've been with me from the beginning, you can rest assured that none of that has changed. My enthusiasm for unearthing, right? Like we're in a big archaeological dig. I want to get down to the you that's actually your organic, all-natural superhuman. Haven't wavered a bit since we started. And I should tell you, this is like day, 18? We are still number one in IPM Nation because of you and just everybody listening in, tuning in, sending me suggestions on things we should talk about. Before I get too far away of it, remember, we're not interested in the watered-down, inauthentic, the herd-approved version of you. Who wants that for themselves, right? Who would want to live that way? You're a force of nature. Why settle for a farce of a life? We're talking about the real you, the true you, the all-natural you at your core, the intrinsic, organic perfection that is you, just waiting to be unleashed. Nothing to buy, no baubles, no trinkets, no widgets, just you. So enough head games. Let's boycott the BS, at least for the next hour. Let's agree that we're going to boycott the BS, the big business, the motivational industrial complex, right? The self-help industry tactics. No more brainwashing, no more blind spots, no more amnesia, no more taking a back seat to anybody. Because you deserve to live your life at the pinnacle. You were born fully capable of leading a truly spectacular life. And it's my job to remind you of that each and every day. That's the line of work I've chosen, right? Now, I'm not a psychiatrist, a psychologist, what else? Like a clinical social worker, licensed or otherwise. I'm certainly not a life coach. My goal is to turbocharge your brain, to prime your mind for the moment at hand, to get a hold of your head before the day does. Because I believe, and I sense you know this, that the one and only key to personal happiness, spiritual fulfillment, right, and professional success, we should go for the trifecta. The one and only key is to recall, revive, and release your inner superhuman, your all-natural being, and unleash the myriad natural resources that are hardwired within you. No more masquerading, no more hiding. No more living your life. This is my favorite, right? Like a piece of tumbleweed being blown around wherever fate dictates. Now, if you choose to hang out for the show, very glad to have you here, but you got to know up front, your days of surrender are over. Self-imposed barriers, gone. Personal limitations, fabricated out of fear or a phobia du jour, thing of the past. Hobbled soul, history. It's time to unleash your inner superhuman. So I really want to go back and apologize again for those of you that were with me on Friday, because was I me? And I think what we might do is re-record that in the form of a podcast so that you can go ahead and give a listen to it, minus all the whatever it was that hit. Far be it from me to turn on the heater, right? So that like my fingers aren't blue and my nose isn't running while I'm doing the show. But apparently turning on the heater caused something to happen in the force, right? I don't know. But I apologize again. And so I may have spent a little bit of time this weekend running around looking for a little bit of, help. Shielded internet cables and surge protectors and signal scrubbers. So I just wanted you to know that, all these years in front of the camera, 18 days behind the microphone, and I'm still learning. So thank you for putting up with me. And with the audio quality for Friday's show, hopefully, I haven't gotten any text yet. Anyone yelling, going, hey, what are you, vacuuming? Yeah. Yeah. Whenever someone says that to me, right, I get in trouble a lot because I don't do a lot of vacuuming. But I'm thinking, yeah, after a 20-year self-imposed moratorium on running a vacuum, I decided to do a live radio show and vacuum up, tidy up a bit. I took up dusting, maybe squeegee the windows, right? I could multitask. I could do like 50 things at once. So yeah, I took up vacuuming. I get like a little dust buster and I'm cleaning up here, sitting around in the booth. All right. I want to also thank the people from Metropolitan Co-working, the home of 14 Blends, right here in beautiful downtown Aurora, which I am reframing now, the home of really big raccoons. I was driving in here this morning, make a left-hand turn, right? You know how the headlights kind of turn with you, and all of a sudden you light something up. And there's a raccoon. It's like the size of a fourth grader standing in the middle of the road. So I'm going to now think of Aurora as, the city of lights and home to some of the biggest raccoons I think I've ever come across. Hey, you know what else I want to mention? I have some friends this morning running in the Boston Marathon. Tom Bauer, Paula Bauer. I know that Joe Dominguez from Tampa is running the Boston Marathon as well. So if you have some friends or family members that are running the Boston Marathon, you know what? I was almost about to say, hey, if you're running in the Boston Marathon listening to this show, are we kidding? But in any event, if you have family or friends that are running in the marathon this morning, give me a shout out, 331-684-SOUL. If you enter the numbers, that's 331-684-7685. Or hit me up on that chat room. So if you go to IPMNation.com and you're listening to All Natural Being, there's a tab, I'm told. I'm looking for it right now. It's some new tech we're employing this morning. Well, I don't know why it says we're now playing David Lee Roth, Drop in a Bucket. So I don't even know if you're hearing my voice. It says we're on air and we're playing some rock and roll, which is cool, I guess. Great song. So if you have anybody that's running in the marathon, give me a holler, let me know, and we'll give them a shout out. All right, let's get to the early morning meme. All adversaries pale, dramatically, actually, pale compared to the enemy within me. Everyone's going to say, Brian, there's an enemy within me? Think about it. It's that little voice that always tells you, you better not try that. Better not listen to Brian. He's crazy. I'll be that true, I suspect, at times. But still, that little voice that goes, no, don't listen to any of this. Don't fall for it at all. And that's the voice that's responsible, ultimately, for those days. Let me ask you, you ever have a day? I guess the best way to describe it would just be an agitated sense of blah. Just bleh, right? Feeling a bit frazzled, a bit frustrated. You wholeheartedly believe that one day it'll get better. You'll get your shot, right? You'll get your act together. But today, you're just feeling a little jittery, a little out of sync. Now, you're not miserable. It's just you've had a healthy dose of the melancholy, and it'd be time to toss it, right? 86 it, get rid of it. You're taunted by a nagging funk. Not necessarily depression, but it's just a sense of being disconnected from all these pleasures we allegedly hear, right? All right, I'm starting to hear a little bit of that garble again. Did you ever hear of philosopher Henry David Thoreau? He calls it quiet desperation. Ever have one of those days? Ever have any of these thoughts? Now, you're not one to complain. Life isn't horrible. There just has to be more meaning in our meaning. There's got to be more magic. Is it wrong for us to want to be riveted, to feel the passion deep in our bones? You ever ask yourself, what would it take just to smile for once like I mean it? To let my strong roll? It feels like we're missing something. Can't precisely define it, but it's dragging us down and holding us back. Definitely draining us out. As I said, there's got to be more meaning to our meaning. It's like there's this invisible wall or a huge net that keeps us trapped and held back. So what's the breakthrough, right? How do we punch our ticket and get the hell out of apathy town? Simple answer. We got to know our enemy. Can't go to battle if you're blind to who you're fighting. Did you ever hear the term Stockholm Syndrome? It's a psychological condition where the captives, weird as it sounds, right? They're abducted. They're held against their will by someone. But they start bonding with the very people that abducted them and hold them. It's like a fellowship of the people tying them down, right? The fellowship of the fetterer. An unnatural, I think, admiration for the absolute authority in the moment denying their freedom. I know it's strange, but it's a real condition. Stockholm Syndrome, check it out. I've come to believe, and I come to know over the last 30 years, that there's also an internal, a personal version of this illness. One where we grow comfortable with the false persona we've created and allowed, right? We've given it permission to hijack our lives and jail our ultimate all-natural being. To paraphrase the author, Walt Kelly, I have met the enemy and he or she is me. The captor and I are one. We convince ourselves that this capture bonding, right, with our fabricated, herd-approved version of ourselves, is our only chance at happiness. It's most certainly our only shot at fulfillment and success. Fitting in seems to be the only way to get something out of this life. Now, adding insult to injury is the speed with which this defense mechanism, right, this egoic part of ourselves that takes over and says, "Oh, you better swim with you better swim with the pack, you better fly with the flock." Dr. Reich called it character armor. But what's amazing is the speed with which this concept of character armor spreads throughout our minds. You ever hear about kudzu vines? They're big in the South. Right? There's a vine that grows. It's a weed, I guess. And it grows at almost an exponential rate, and it chokes out everything around it. Steals everything from the soil so that other plants can't survive. It's what's called an invasive species. Well, the same thing happens mentally. This character armor gets in, right, and starts stealing all the nutrients from our native mental soil. Starts choking us out, right? Keeps us from advancing, blocks the sun. So one day we turn around and we can't separate the real from the rhetoric in our lives. And for whatever reason, some of us, not all of us, most certainly, I'm guessing the people listening to this show, some, though, can't seem to get enough of it. The flag they wave is the same color as the towel they're throwing in, right? It's that pathetic white, "Oh, I surrender. No more, no more." We convince ourselves that surrender is the best idea. It just seems inevitable, Brian, so why fight it? Why not just cave in and just become a couch potato? All this all-natural being craziness, all releasing your inner superhuman craziness you talk about all the time, it's just not worth it. I can remember back in the days as a cop in New York where you would bump into repeat criminal offenders, right? Guys or girls that had done some time before in jail. And you'd ask them, what are you thinking, right? You had your shot. You got out. You were either on parole or probation. You had your whole life in front of you. And they'd look at you very honestly, to be candid. And they'd say, well, Bri, at least I get, they called it 3 squares, a hot, and a cot. So they get 3 square meals, a hot shower, and a bed to sleep in. They say, look, at least I don't have to sleep on the street. Believe me, it's safer in lockup. So people would commit these crimes just so they could get themselves recommitted to jail, to prison. Now, for others like you, thank God, failure to provoke yourself to greatness, adopting the sense of, just put me back in jail, it'll be easier there. Because you and I don't think like that. We work to break the bonds that bind us. We don't ignore our natural birthright, our boldness. Because if we did, it would start to grate on us. Start to grate on our nerves. Now, maybe you've had a time in your life where you just said, that's it. Enough of the head games. It's getting old. My heart has absolutely had enough. And we snapped. No more self-sabotage. I love the poet John Milton in Paradise Lost, the way he wrote it. Awake, arise, or be forever fallen. You've had enough. The tipping point is here. Now, whether it's coming for you or whether you've had it in your past, there comes a fork in the road. Self-mastery or self-slavery. I wish it were tougher than that. But it comes down to that question. Self-mastery or self-slavery? Am I going to soar or am I going to sabotage myself? Did you ever have one of those interrogations, speaking of law enforcement, one of those interrogations with the mirror? Am I going to be impeccably human or live the rest of my life embedded in the herd? Right? Superhuman or hobbled soul? And I think the dark night of the soul exists for this one reason. It's there to force us to finally make a stand for ourselves. To draw our line in the sand and say no more. No more stalemate, no more deadlock. We're not coming back to this intellectual impasse again because we're not running from it. And we're going to pick our path, mastery or slavery. If you ever had a moment like that in front of the mirror, you want some answers. You find yourself asking, is this what my life is meant to be? I know I deserve better than this. Maybe you've asked yourself, is happiness in life guaranteed? Not for me, but for other people. Maybe there's something wrong with me. Maybe I'm defective in some way. Or you might have asked, why have I settled down? Why have I accepted the watered-down version of myself? You may have said to yourself, I'm sick and tired of the blah, lukewarm feeling in my life. And then you ask, quite honestly, quite candidly, what has playing it safe really done for me? Ever ask yourself those questions? Ever wonder if you should? You may know that the root meaning of the word genius is one's animating spirit. It's not about smarts. It's about being up close and personal, intimately acquainted with your inborn authenticity. A genius knows its own thrill. So the definition of human genius is someone that remembers and releases their own thrill, their own authenticity, their animating spirit. And I'm certain now that the root cause of most human stress, you may find some other smaller causes of human stress, but one of the most powerful, deeply rooted in us, is in fact us forgetting who we ultimately are. Not knowing our own thrill, not putting ourselves through the paces of exercising that thrill. Your inner superhuman wants out. We're comfortable with our Stockholm Syndrome, right? We're sympathizing with our captor, our ego. And to the degree that we remain sympathetic, we lock ourselves up in a jail. We keep the key. We're the jailer. We damn our all-natural being. But the stress of holding back that flood of who you truly are, it builds every day. So we have to prop up this inaccurate image of ourselves, refusing to optimize the very best parts of who we ultimately are. And hey, it's taken a toll on every aspect of our health. Too much stress. Not nearly enough smiling. So I guess the fork in the road is, do you want to be stressed? Or do you want to smile? Do you want to smile like you mean it? So here's my suggestion. Why don't we stop sleeping with the enemy? No more Stockholm Syndrome. No more turning our back on ourselves. What has that gotten us? Why leash yourself any longer? Just because it feels normal? That doesn't make it natural. Might be normal to get like styrofoam packaging peanuts if you order something from Amazon. It might be normal. It comes all the time. It doesn't mean it's natural. You wouldn't want to eat those peanuts. So I'm saying it's simply time to escape the kudzu cognition. All those weeds growing in our minds, choking out, stealing all the nutrients from our mental soil. It's time for us to be impeccably human. It's time for you to be impeccably you. So how are you going to do that? You simply say to yourself, I'm here for the ride. I've punched my ticket, I've paid my dues, and it's showtime. My days of kowtowing are over. Whether it's an exterior hold, an exterior speed bump to my superhuman status, or whether it's a little bit closer to home, whether I'm the enemy, I'm sleeping with the very person that's jailing me. All right, we're going to go ahead and run to a quick break. We will be right back.
You're listening to All Natural Being with Brian Brawdy. How much longer will you let them hijack your head and your heart?
I love that intro. How much longer are you going to stand for them or yourself hijacking your own heart and your own head? How much longer are you going to let the kudzu vines, right? Those cognitive kudzu vines that are choking you, holding you back, how much longer before you weed them out? Because ultimately, it's easy to point the fingers at other people, but as a part of our early morning meme for today, remembering all adversaries, they pale in comparison to the enemy within me. So if we're going to, let's say we wanted to work on today's 20-minute victory, on how we could identify our own Stockholm Syndrome, how we've grown accustomed bonding with our own captor. How would we do that? I thought about it coming in this morning, and I got some really great advice when I was in high school. I spent the last part of my junior year and all of my senior year in a high school in Milton, West Virginia. And to any friends in Milton, West Virginia, listening this morning, I'm absolutely thinking about you because of this one story. I remember one day, apparently, I know, hard to believe, right? But apparently I had done something wrong and was being called into the principal's office. Now, I think I had some cohorts, and I wouldn't name them now, but there were a couple of guys that I used to run with, and I think we were all being called in together, if I remember correctly. So, that we get our little hall pass from the teacher, and everyone in the classroom's going, "Oh, what did you do? You guys are in trouble." And this was back in a day and age where the principal, believe it or not, was allowed to paddle you. Now, I don't remember if you had to drop your pants maybe to your knees and you got smacked with a paddle, or maybe they let you keep your jeans up. I don't know if I don't recall. But you're walking down the hallway going, we could get paddled for this. So I, in my mind, started going, look, I was framed. I don't know what you guys have done, but I'm innocent. Unless you've got me on videotape, you ain't got me. So as we start down the hall and we're thinking, what's this going to lead to? I'll never forget rounding the corner, and the receptionist that would sit at his desk, and I cannot remember his name for the life of me. So if anyone listening has his name, go ahead and send it to me at 331-684-SOUL, 331-684-7685. Please send it to me. Or maybe I shouldn't mention his name. Well, if you know his name, you know who I'm talking about. So we turn the corner, and his secretary, the receptionist, maybe it's a better term, the receptionist had already opened this wooden, like, half door, right? She was standing there with the door open, kind of like Vanna White, with her right arm extended, pointing back to the principal's door, and his door was already open. And now I'm thinking, oh, they didn't even want a speed bump. Whatever's happening, they want it to go down pretty quick. So we get in there. The principal jumps up from his desk, and he looks right, I guess I'm the first one in the room, as I remember it. He looks right at me, and he gives me a piece of advice. He was like my first ever guru. He gave me a piece of advice that I give to myself quite often, really. You may want to borrow it. I would never say this to you, but I'll share with you what he said to me and what I say to myself. He looked right at me, pointed, paddle in one hand, index finger in the other, point at me, and here's what he said: sit down and shut up. That was it. Sit down and shut up. Well, at times, when I've seen this concept of the Stockholm Syndrome kick in, when I see the frenetic pace of everything going on around me, the things that cause me to panic, the things that cause me to get worked up, the things maybe, not in a good way, but the things that cause my heart to race, you get that little dry feeling in your mouth where you feel like something really bad's going to go down. I'll never forget his advice. What do? I sit down and I shut up. I guess we could call it what? Stop, drop, and reflect. I sit down, I pay attention to what the voices are saying in my own head and attempt to identify, is it the captor? Is it that ego part of me that goes, oh, we told you not to break the rules. Ah, you're going to get it, mister. When that little voice kicks in, if I stop and I pay attention, then I can decide which voice is it. Is it a voice that's going to allow me to tap into my all-natural being and release my inner superhuman status? To unleash the truly imaginable power of living in this present moment? Or is it the crazy voice, the Stockholm Syndrome voice, right? The little captor that goes, I told you. So in that moment, today, how many years later? I graduated in 1979. How many years later? When that voice kicks in, I say to myself, sit down and shut up. So that I can decide in that moment what voices are the ones I want to listen to, if any, and what voices I'm absolutely going to ignore. Now, I know it sounds like a huge challenge when those voices are just nagging, right? They never stop. Until you tell them to stop. Just try this once in your 20-minute victory today. If that kicks in, just goes, enough. I don't want to hear another word. And if you've never spoken to yourself like this before, and people will say, oh, Bri, is that really compassionate? Sometimes compassion is only compassion when it has teeth. And you'll know on the inside. You'll know if you're being unduly critical to yourself, yes? Or whether just to break that sense of the video and audio playing in your mind, right? That's on repeat. If you've never before told it to stop, enough, I'm not listening to you. It's like, what was that? And it interrupts its state long enough for you to decide, are these voices a benefit or a detriment? Am I using my mind as a sanctuary or an asylum? Don't be like those people that I used to meet in law enforcement that say, you know what, Brian, it's just not worth it. I'd rather go back in. I'd rather have on a jumpsuit that says prisoner across the back. I'd rather have a cot, and 3 meals. I'd rather just be able to sleep, take a shower, eat, and not have to worry about the labyrinth, what life throws at you. We don't want to be like that, you and me. We don't want our labyrinth to turn into a jail where we're so worried about the Minotaur. We're so worried about fate. And if you could talk about cutting through the static, if you were with me on Friday, minus all the noise, you'll remember we talked about was I me? And whether you wait and do this exercise in your final days, I think you might want to consider doing it a little sooner than that. But whether it's the next minute, the next hour, the next day, the week, the month, the year, you always have the ability, when that voice kicks in, to say, sit down, be quiet, don't want to hear it again. And then ask yourself, in that particular scenario, was I me? Did I bring my A game? Did I keep up with the destiny that I know I'm here to achieve? Or did I let fate dictate my next turn in the labyrinth? I'll also tell you, left over from those law enforcement days, was my absolute heartfelt belief in this concept of fingerprints of providence. I had a sergeant who was a great teacher to me very early on in my career. He pulled me aside and said, look, whenever you go to a crime scene, know that the bad guy or the bad girl has left some clue behind. May not be a massive clue. I remember one time, burglary, guy climbing through the window. When he goes to climb out, his wallet falls out. We find his wallet in the same window he climbed out of. Oh, be that were it true, if every bit of evidence was that glaring. But there are some times that you've got to be really good at finding what that evidence is. And my sergeant would say to me, the evidence is here. Did you just bring your A game? Are you going to be able to find it? So I made myself, I got a briefcase, right? I think it was like an American Tourister, but it would be like a laptop briefcase today, hard shelled. I got some styrofoam and I cut out the little places to put my fingerprint powder, my super glue, some of the brushes that I could use. Sometimes you're looking for fingerprints. I had little, I don't know if they were called baggies at the time, but little evidence bags that I could take things, right? Put the evidence in the bag, seal it, and then you had to seal it and sign it so that the chain of evidence would hold up if you ever went to court. Well, it's no different when it comes to fingerprints of provenance. You got to be really good at discerning what the evidence is. But the really good news is you get a new lease on life when you do. In every moment, I believe, and you must feel, or you wouldn't be sticking with me now some 18 days, you must feel that if you pay attention to that evidence, if you hone the skill set of looking for what providence is left behind, you're going to get better at it. Just like I did. There were times the sergeant would come in behind me and go, hey, Bri, you missed this, you missed that. And I always wanted him there until I got to the point where I didn't want him there. I wanted to get to the point where I was such a good detective at finding out what the bad guys or the bad girls did at the scene that I wasn't going to leave until I had the evidence that told me who did it. Now, admittedly, sometimes it's just hard. You may not be able to find it, but that doesn't mean we give up looking for it. And we build it like any other muscle in our body. It's like any other skill. You want to take up tennis. You want to take up chess. Maybe you want to take up painting or coloring, pottery, whatever you want to take up. You practice, you get better. Little baby steps, right? You practice, you get better. It's the same thing with finding the evidence left behind by providence when you're on the path of your destiny. Every time, take a little bit of evidence, bag it, you'll have it when you need it. So when it comes time after the fact, right? Like I always used to think about what it would take to build a case for the grand jury. You get all your evidence, present it, hopefully, in a way that the members of the grand jury would go, oh yeah, he's got the bad guy, or he's got the bad girl. So I look at it now in my own life. What do I got to do? When I present this self to the ultimate question, was I me? When I take the evidence, the fingerprints of provenance, I bag them all up. I know where I'm going. I see the vision. And at the end of that impromptu investigation, when I'm held to the question, was I me? I'm able to present my case. Yes, here's how I was me. Here's what I did. Instead, a lot of folks, they'll ask that question, was I me? Did I find the evidence? And then there's just silence. We went through the other day 600 different things that people use to fill the silence because they want to be held accountable for the answer. If for the next 20 minutes you decide to find the evidence of where providence is directing you, right? Those cognitive cairns. If you decide that no matter what, you're not leaving, all right, it's not a crime scene, but right, you're not leaving the scene, or I guess it could be a crime scene if you miss it, if you're going to live your life like that person that always wanted to go back to jail. And I met more of them than you would imagine. So you could call it a crime scene if that's the mindset you want to adopt. But why would you? Why would you? Look for the evidence providence is telling you, the cognitive cairns, showing up right now to tell you. And then I would take out my little book that we spoke about the other day, the little notepad. And it's not like really journaling, because I find that journaling can become its own crutch. Journaling can become, oh, well, I wrote everything down in the journal, so now I'm done working on it. Not always, but sometimes journaling is the way we fill the silence. Doesn't necessarily meaning we're identifying the evidence. So in our books, when we pull it out, what's the evidence? What did you find? What were the fingerprints of providence? What were the little telltales that you uncovered that allow you to answer that question? Was I me? Absolutely, because here's the evidence I bagged and tagged. This morning's early morning meme. All adversaries pale compared to the enemy within me. Because the enemy within me is digging the pigeonhole, doesn't want the investigation of the rabbit hole. And you know this voice. It's the voice that says, don't rock the boat. Don't go for it. Why get off the couch cognitively, right? Why get off the couch? And it's that voice, that inner enemy, that attempts to shame us if we dare attempt to have something different in our lives, right? That little voice, how dare you? That's the inner enemy we're talking about. Now, the best way to confront that enemy is to do it one little 20-minute victory at a time. Because it can't hang when your superhuman shows up. Just can't. No way. When you tap into that all-natural being, when you tap into the truly, I say this all the time, the truly unimaginable power that's encoded in the present moment, and it's waiting for you to decode it. When you tap into that, there's no adversary that can stand a chance against you. You've got your rhythm. You're ready to go. All right, we're going to run to a quick break. Good golly, that might... I was thinking about that story of getting paddled. That's where my mind ran to. All right, we will go ahead and be right back after this quick little break.
You're listening to All Natural Being with Brian Brawdy. Because friends don't let friends fall for self-help industry tactics.
All right, if you've been following along, you know this is one of my favorite times of the show. Self-help industry tactics. Why is this such a big thing for me? Because I don't think there's anything wrong with you. I don't think you need any philosophical pharmaceuticals to get yourself through the day. No pesticides. You know, I was talking with Ashley over the weekend, and she was telling me about this article that said there are certain fruits that you don't need to waste your money on to buy organic. And she had a couple different lists from a couple different sites that talked about the fruits and vegetables with the thickest skin. You don't have to worry about the pesticides because the thick skin blocks them from getting to the fruit. Apparently, like strawberries is the one thing, I think it was the top one on the list, where you absolutely have to buy organic because there's barely any skin there, right? Whatever pesticides that are put in communicate directly to the center of the fruit. Now, I don't know if there's such thing as organic coconuts. Maybe so. But when we work to thicken our skin, like a banana, like an avocado, like a coconut, right? Like corn, because of the husks, when we work to grow the thickness of our skin, to return it to its natural thickness. And these philosophical pesticides, right? These pins looking for a cushion to stick, they don't get a shot at us. So stop believing that there's anything wrong with you. Stop believing that you need to be shamed into thinking, well, now that was the cattle prod I needed. I'll go ahead now and get started. Why treat yourself that way? Why be on your own back that way? Right? No stress, more smiling. Develop the thickness of a skin, like a coconut, a banana, an avocado, an ear of corn. Because then all this other stuff outside doesn't affect you. All these inorganic things that everyone wants to coat on top of us for our own good. Can't happen. We have a thicker skin. And that's what we can work on. All right, there was a great article that I wanted to kind of bring back around on this from Lifehack. I don't know if you're familiar with it. You can find it online, Lifehack. 8 reasons why your worst enemy is yourself. I can tell you reason number 1, even though it's not on their list. Reason number 1, you got thin skin. You got thin skin. And your inner enemy is able to team up, right? Its co-conspirator is what's ever coming in from the outside. Anything they can hold on to. It's looking for someone to corroborate, right? To say, oh, yeah, I think Brian, I think Sally, I think whoever. Yeah, they're absolutely like that. Let's use that. Let's use that philosophical pharmaceutical. Let's use that philosophical pesticide. That's the way we're going to get them. So, my number 1 on the list, return your skin to its all-natural thickness. Their number 1, you don't manage your expectations. According to them, there's an ambitious, starry-eyed voice that guides you. Even louder may be a voice of complete impracticality and unrealistic hope. It suggests that you don't get them confused. Well, when you remain in the labyrinth, you know lefts, rights, ups, downs, pivots, swerves, right? As John, a listener from early on, said, shift happens. Shift happens. You know, in the labyrinth, in the moment, listening to the still small voice of the inner superhuman, you know which way to go. You know the evidence. You're getting really good at bagging and tagging the evidence that's going to chart you on your path. Number 2, it says you fail to appreciate the small things. We know that. That's why we have 20-minute victories, right? 20 minutes. What can I do right now for the next 20 minutes? 1/72nd of my overall day. And maybe you've forgotten it, but I believe, and I think you know, in the marrow of your mind, right? The deepest parts of your heart. I think you know you're worth at least 1/72nd of your overall day. It's great to be caring. It's great to be compassionate. It's great to be altruistic. I'm just saying, for 20 minutes a day, turn those cool attitudes that you have inward. Be compassionate. Be caring. Be altruistic when it comes to the reflection you see in the mirror. Number 3, you take too much for granted. That's really kind of like the point above, right? We don't appreciate the little things. We take too much for granted. If you're here and you went this morning from horizontal to vertical, you got up, or if it's nighttime by where you are right now, you're still vertical, then it's a good gig. It's a good gig, and one that we can be grateful for. Number 4 on the list, they say, you're your own worst critic. Only you knew that. Are you your own worst critic? Or, because of your Stockholm syndrome, turned inwardly, it's just easier to jump on the bandwagon. You might not necessarily be your own worst critic. It's just you got thin skin. The critics all around you. And it's easier to jump on the bandwagon than it is to drive your superhuman bus. Only you know if you're your own worst critic. Number 5 on the list says you overanalyze. Is that true? To overanalyze everything in your life? Do you have some binge thinking Could you take the advice of my principal, the advice he gave me? Again, I'm not giving this advice to you because you know what? I don't even like that term. I have never told another human being to shut up. I just never have. I don't like the term. But when he said it to me, right, pre-battle, when he said it to me, it rocked me. Sit down and shut up. If we're overanalyzing everything, if we're binge thinking, maybe that's just a way of filling the silent void. When we know we're going to be asked, was I me? Crickets, right? Cue the silence. Maybe overanalyzing is a way to at least fill that void. Make some kind of racket so we're not held to our own silence. Number 6, you prefer the easy way. It says in the article, when life gives us lemons, why should we bother to make lemonade when you can just go out and buy it? Shortcuts are the way of life, the article says. And though they may be a necessary time saver, they detract from our sense of working towards something, of earning it. It's the last sentence that I disagree with, at least this particular portion, this paragraph, number 6. You don't have to earn it. It's already yours. It was given to you. Your all-natural being is in there. You decide. Is it worth to let your strong roll? We say all the time it's simple to do, but it's not easy. I think life loves friction. I think it loves speed bumps. It's the way we grow mentally. It's the way we grow physically. I think it's the way we grow emotionally and spiritually. It loves friction. It loves getting in and mixing it up, right? It loves those speed bumps. But if we're always looking for the easy way, what do we get? Number 7 on the list. It says you assume. Projecting certain assumptions onto certain situations, admittedly, as it says, can be disastrous. But it's the way our brains work. From the time we were very little, our brains are looking for pegs to hang things on. It's the way the mind is. You learn something and you hold on to it so you can use it as a stepping stone to the next. But we get to the point when we toss away our training wheels, when we toss away our water wings, when we accept responsibility for our own flotation, our own equilibrium in life, when we accept responsibility, we thank the people who brought us the training aids when we were younger, but now we're growing up. Now we drive the bus. So we get rid of those things that the mind has used in the past to kind of give us that sense of equilibrium, of stability, because we don't need it anymore. If life is truly all about the friction you permit in your life, that's how you hone your head, you hone your heart, you cause the two of them to dovetail, then there's sometimes that when we assume, who are we? You know, I had a really sad story last week about someone that I knew. Out for a walk, hit by a car. Was going to go out for a 15-minute walk. Across the street, bam, gone. We never know. So we're busy assuming, I'll take care of that tomorrow. Well, maybe, perhaps. I hope not, but maybe. Who am I? Maybe you and I won't be here tomorrow. You can't tell. You can't assume. Apparently your inner critic likes to assume because it keeps you distracted. It doesn't want you to sit down and shut up. Because when we sit and we're quiet, that's when the vibration comes. That's when we can feel our all-natural being. And we become enamored, Stockholm Syndrome, right? We become enamored with our egoic self when we go, well, I've got a long list of things to do today. I'll try to squeeze in a 20-minute victory. Great. It's up to you. What do I know? Remember, though, 20-minute victories, they can be impromptu, spur of the moment, or they can be scheduled, right? But don't let your sense of knocking things off your list, don't let your journaling of all the things that you accomplished today. It's fascinating to me. You're on the internet. You see, would you like a higher consciousness? Would you like a lower vibration? Would you like to do all of these other things? It's just more bling for the ego. If you have a black belt, let's say in a martial art, God love you. And you know the people I'm talking about. It will take every turn to remind you of the black belt. I can tell you, some of the biggest badasses on the planet do everything to keep you from knowing they're a 7th degree black belt. They'd never tell you. Never tell you. So if it's more bling that we're going to get to build our sense of how special we are, well, you know, I'm enlightened, Brian. I love this. I love people in the self-help industry. Well, I stay in enlightenment throughout my day. Oh, do you? Really? All right, great. Whatever. But if your enlightenment comes another way for your ego to kind of puff its chest and go, oh boy, aren't I special? It's not your all-natural being. It's not your superhuman. Because the cool thing about your superhuman is once you tap into it, it likes, right? It likes being undercover. Doesn't want to be jailed the way we've kept it. But your inner superhuman knows in order to be an inner superhuman, right, it doesn't have to brag about who it is. So when we assume, oh, I'll worry about this tomorrow, I'll put it on my list, I'll journal about it later tonight when I'm burning my incense and having a cup of tea, whatever you use to fill the silence, ask yourself the question, if this were your last 20 minutes on the planet, what would you do to tap into your all-natural being? What would you do to release your inner superhuman? Number 8 on the list, they say you doubt yourself. And this list from Lifehack is talking about the 8 reasons why your worst enemy is yourself. It says ultimately you doubt yourself. Now, in fairness, if you haven't taken your inner superhuman out for a spin, how could you do anything but doubt it? That's why 20-minute victories. We slowly rebuild the relationship we were born with. We're done maligning ourselves. We're done defaming ourselves. We're done shaming ourselves. For 20 minutes, get off your own back. Cut yourself some slack. Give yourself a break. Sit down. Shut up. Listen for the voice of the inner superhuman. Where will it direct you? Sit down, take in a breath, exhale, scan your horizon, and you'll know how to take action. But again, this is simple stuff. Doesn't make it easy. Doesn't make it easy. But when we doubt ourselves, we have a track record of it. We doubt ourselves because we've been doing it for years. And whether you're listening and you know of someone that has a quarter-life crisis or a midlife crisis, the crisis, in my estimation, is that you've forgotten who you ultimately are. You spent too many years masquerading around with a persona that isn't your inner superhuman. And you know it's true. But the mind goes, oh, I have some time-tested advice that I'm going to give here now, Brian. So if you could just take your own advice and sit down and shut up. I've got some time-tested advice that I'm going to give. No. Just because it's time-tested doesn't make it natural. Could it be? Sure. But you're going to say, oh, this has been going on for eons. Don't care, right? Doesn't mean it's going to work for you in the moment, right? Watch an episode of The Vikings. Pillaging has been going on forever. That doesn't mean it's a good thing to do. Well, it's time-tested. Yeah, I'm guessing so. Getting in a boat full of guys and girls with shields and spears and swords and showing up on a shore where no one's waiting for you, yeah, that's time-tested. I guess if you're going to maraud, right, if you're going to do mobile robbery, that's time-tested. That'll work for you. Doesn't make it natural. Doesn't make it something that's going to work for you. So when it comes to being your own enemy, let's take out our notepad again. What would we do? How could we quiet that inner enemy? Because ultimately, and here's the thing I think we all know, ultimately, it really is trying to do what it believes is best for us. But it's misguided. It's misguided. And anytime we look for a trapping, some bling, a bauble, whatever it's going to be, anytime we do that, It's not building on our inner superhuman. It's just not happening. It's giving the ego more to encrust itself with. And it's a great distraction, right? Lighthouse in the storm. The ego will always go, follow me, follow me, follow me, follow me, follow me. But for 20 minutes, 1/72nd of your day, what if you said, all right, hold on here a minute. Thank you for everything you've done for me. Remember, Greece, for the mind is gratitude. So even the inner enemy, if you go, I'm cool with that. Thanks for all your effort. How about let me take it for a spin? I appreciate everything you've done. I'm not here to be confrontational. Thanks for the lift. How about let me drive for a little bit? And it's been my experience that when you do that, that inner critic, you kind of bamboozle him or her a bit, right? Because if you're fighting against it, it's ready for the fight. It's ready for the brawl. It's ready for the smackdown. To it, it's one big mental mixed martial arts match at the weigh-in, right? It can't chomp. It can. It's absolutely chomping at the bits. It can't wait to get in and mix it up with you. But if you go in and go, yeah, you know what? Thanks for everything. I appreciate it. Why don't you you've been working hard, man, you egos. Talk about working around the clock. Why don't you take a little time out, relax, put your feet up, have a sip of lemonade, and enjoy the nice weather. It's been my experience that when you do that, it's not going to guns right away. It will release its hold just enough for you to tap into all natural being, the power of living in the present moment. And you deserve that. So before we get ready to go this morning, I want to go back over one more time, if it's cool with you, how to identify the inner enemy. I think you already know that. We want to thank it for everything it's done for us to date and say, I'd like to chart my own course. Thank you for the training wheels. Thank you for the water wings. Thank you for all that. But I'd like to go ahead now and see if I can't give a run at it. And I think when you're honest with yourself like that, every part of you appreciates it. I most certainly thank the training wheels and water wings that I had in my life. Can you imagine trying to do some of this stuff if you're a year old? When you're thankful for everything that's happened to you, you accept full responsibility, good or bad, up or down, left or right, pivot or swerve, whatever it is, cul-de-sac or dead end, whatever it is. Go, yeah, it's on me, right? It's on me. I think your heart and your head dovetail because it digs that sense of honesty. So ask yourself, could it be true? Could I beat back my kudzu cognition one machete stroke at a time? One machete stroke at a time. What can I pare away? What can I hack away so that my inner superhuman can see the light of day? Because when you and I do that, that's when real progress comes. We're not doing anything cold turkey. No one is suggesting that we abandon, the tried and true, ancient wisdom, Brian. Let's not throw that, let's not throw that out. No one's saying that. Baby steps, 20-minute victories. All right, we got to run. Again, thank you to everyone who has made us the number one show here on IPMNation.com. Thank you to my friends at Metropolitan Co-working, the home of 14 Blends. And thank you, the listener, because I'm really having the time of my life. I get up before the alarm goes off, and my alarm is set for 3 a.m. So when I say I bake this stuff fresh, I do this all natural. It's handmade every day because I want to remind you always about the natural resources you already possessed, long before you ever thought about listening to me, and what those natural resources allow you to be ultimately capable of. So until next time, no more limitations, no more excuses, no more unhappiness, most certainly no more shaming, no more character assassination, no more maligning yourself. But ultimately, it's your call. Are you primed or prey? Is your mind a sanctuary or an asylum? Looking forward, as always, to hanging out with you tomorrow. Have a great day, a great rest of your day, wherever you're listening from.
With Brian Brawdy. Because it's never too late to take your life back.
BMNation.com.